everybody. Welcome back to the Best Year of Your Life Summit. My name is Lori Gambacorta, and I have the privilege of being here today with Matt Boggs. Matt is a dating coach, best-selling author, and creator of Cracking the Man Code. Known for his expertise in relationships, he's been featured on national platforms such as The Today Show, CNN, Headline News, Oprah and Friends, and ABC. With a strong online following of over 2 million, Matt's insights and practical advice on love and relationships have reached more than 175 million people worldwide. His published works include Project Everlasting. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Matt. And our focus is going to be on relationships and communication and creating a deeper, more meaningful connection. So this is obviously your area of expertise. And I just want to welcome you and thank you for taking the time to help people in this summit live the best year of their life.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to share. And I love the title of this summit. The invitation to speak came across, and I'm all about holding the possibility of no matter how good it's been in the past, right? Some of us that are listening and watching this are coming off of amazing years. And sometimes there's this upper limit that we hit that's like, well, can it really get better than this? Like, gosh, that was such an amazing experience. And some of us are coming off of really tough years. Maybe it's a diagnosis or we lost a loved one or work was really tough. And holding and connecting to a possibility that transformation and amazing results don't have to take a long time. That you can learn frameworks and tools and principles, because I know from my own experience in my own life that massive transformation can happen. And so I love plugging into, let's create the best year of our life. Let's hold that possibility. And then you guys are bringing about amazing trainings and principles to help us do that. So I really appreciate the invite.
I appreciate your enthusiasm, and it's, very hopeful to, for people, I think, who are coming off a rough year to know that it doesn't have to take a long time. So I want to start with some of your favorite practices for cultivating closeness and connection in relationships, since that's really our goal here today.
It's really about the depth of experience, the depth of love, the depth of connection, that those really sharing something that matters with those that we love is directly related to the quality of our life. And as I say that, I could imagine that most people listening and watching, they would resonate with that. They agree with that. And at the same time, it's so easy to let superfluous things, surface level things get in the way of our connection. And specifically around, there's so many ideas we could dive into on this, but one of them is around the willingness to share openly with somebody else, to share how you feel about them, to share from a place of depth rather than just surface level conversations. Mm-hmm. And I was so petrified to do this growing up, because I equated, this was in my 20s when I was really exploring. I had a really tough time in relationships, especially romantic relationships, in large part my inability to understand polarity, my inability to understand how to be vulnerable and open. And I had equated being open and sharing how I really felt about somebody else, or sharing about an area that I was struggling with. I equated that with weakness. Right. And weakness in my mind, my paradigm, was to be avoided at all costs. Because when you're weak, then you don't deserve love. I had equated, if you're weak, you're not going to survive. If you're weak, you don't deserve love. If you're weak, you're unworthy. And so redefining, I went to this seminar actually. And in the seminar, they took me through some incredible experiences that I found myself in a position of standing in front of a group of like 100 people. And for the first time in my life, sharing something that I was struggling with. And my palms were sweating and my hands were shaking. But I caused myself to be seen in that moment. And after that share, people came up to me And this was halfway through this week-long seminar. And they were saying, Matt, I feel more connected to you in this moment than I felt like I've ever been connected to you. And then when I came home, one of my best friends, she came over to my house and she was like, so how was the weekend? And I was like, well, here's like, do I tell her what happened? Do I tell her how I felt? Or do I just kind of gloss over it, which was my old pattern? And I decided to go deep, and I decided to share how I really felt, and my vulnerabilities and what I had struggled with, and the moments of overcoming that. And at the end of that, I remember I had a really hard time looking her in the eyes and saying this. Like, most of it was just me kind of staring down. I was sitting on the bed, and I'm just kind of staring down. I'm sharing this, just hoping, like, there's part of me that thinks, oh, she's going to think you're so dumb, and she's going to think that you're like not worthy and all of this stuff. And at the end of that conversation, I look up and she's got tears in her eyes. And she said the same thing that people in the seminar said. She said, Matt, I feel closer to you than I've ever felt before. And what I realized, it was my first real breakthrough experience in being vulnerable and really, truly authentic. I mean, authenticity is not a binary. It's not like you are or you're not. There's like degrees of authenticity where you're really letting yourself be seen. It was the first time where I was really letting myself be seen, and in all of it, this, the sharing of the things that went well and what I was struggling with. And I realized that, oh, that isn't weakness. It's actually the antithesis of weakness. That what's required to do that is ultimately strength and courage.
It's so curious that, because we have, we've grown up in this paradigm of having that belief that power is external. And yeah, something like a moment like that, where you come to this huge moment of self-realization that vulnerability is actually the seat of our power, and being able to, like you said, like share and be authentic. Um, and hopefully, I think this is, we're shifting that paradigm as more and more people wake up and recognize how important vulnerability is, especially if you want to have strong, good, healthy relationships. That you need to be vulnerable and have that trust. But so many people struggle with that. Like, what would you say to those people who are really struggling with their ability to be vulnerable?
Yes. Well, most of that comes from a story that we're telling ourselves about what vulnerability means, like I was, that vulnerability is going to equal weakness, which equals rejection. If I'm vulnerable, I'm going to lose the love that I'm seeking. And the irony of this is that by staying guarded, we reject the love that we're seeking in advance. We don't actually connect in the deeper ways that we can with people. And so really rewiring in our minds, telling ourselves a new story that says, I'm willing to be vulnerable for two things. Number one, the connection that gets created with somebody else. And number two, the permission it gives them to be vulnerable with me. That was the thing I didn't quite anticipate in the whole story, in this formula of discovering, oh, wow, this creates deep connection, is that when I am willing to share openly about what's going well and the places where I'm struggling, the messy middle, the things I'm going through, it naturally gives others permission to be able to do that. I will say a caveat, though, that the vulnerabilities, when you're going to share the tender stuff, imagine it's like these are the tender emotions. These are the tender innermost parts of ourselves. It's like a little newborn baby that hasn't grown up yet. Like, these are the places in us that are developing or that we're healing, or that. So you wouldn't just put a newborn baby in anybody's hands. You would only put that in somebody's hands who's going to respect and take care of and love that baby. And so when I describe vulnerabilities, you're not sharing these types of conversations with somebody who's not going to hold space for you and not going to receive it with respect. Mm-hmm. And so for us, that many people, that really narrows the group of people that they can share this with.
Right.
And so I don't want to exclude the group that is not going to take that the same way. It doesn't mean you can't share openly. It's just a matter of a degree. What are you offering them? And so there's two things that really help in this regard. One is that we're not seeking their approval through this interaction. We're not seeking validation through this interaction. We're not seeking that they solve or heal or do anything for us, or really any particular response. We're coming from a place, and this was huge, of our own worthiness. That love isn't something and worthiness isn't something that happens externally. It's like if somebody else gives it to us or that they deem us worthy. Love and worthiness is innate. It's the connection we have with our higher power. Every single one of us comes in fully worthy and fully loved. And so you're anchoring from that place where so much of the work is on our own to say, what in me needs my love and acceptance right now? And as we love and accept ourselves to such a degree that we've got a beautiful foundation, we're now not needing somebody else's love and acceptance to validate our own existence or the pain that we're going through. It can very much help when someone says, hey, I know what you're going through and I've been there. And I honor you, but it's not a deficit if they don't. So the offering of connection is coming from a place of giving, not from a place of taking or needing. And I think that's super. It's a major differential point here. I watched this documentary film recently. Dr. John DeMartini had done a film called Breakthrough. And so I was watching this film because the producer wants to do a film with us. And so I'm checking it out. And there's one moment where there's a business owner who's in his 50s and he's never had a good relationship with his dad. And they've never been open with one another. They've never really shared how they feel about one another. And he knows that part of his breakthrough in his business in allowing himself to really be seen, because he knows that to grow his business, he needs to be the spokesperson of the business and get out there on social media and start speaking and doing these activities. And there's a part of him that's terrified. And he can't figure out why he's so afraid of being seen. So he's going through these exercises of being seen. And one of them is let your dad really see you. And he knows that for him to have this conversation with his dad for the first time in his life, he's going to tell his dad that he loves him. They've never spoken the words, I love you, to each other. And so there's this great scene where he sits down with his dad. They're in the backyard and he's like, Dad, you know, we haven't really had the kind of relationship where we tell each other how we feel and been really that open with one another, but I really want to change that. And I want to lead by example. And I just want you to know, Dad, that we've had our ups and downs, but with every fiber of my being, I want you to know that I love you and I will always love you. And the dad takes a deep breath in, and the dad's in his 80s, right? Takes a deep breath in and goes, well, son, the feeling is reciprocated. And I laughed. I literally laughed out loud watching the documentary. And it was such a beautiful moment because the dad is doing everything he can to meet his son in this moment. And that is his level of skill set.
Right. Yeah.
And so that really is a beautiful segue or dovetail into this other half of this coin, which is for us to be vulnerable and to recognize that those in our lives that we want a deeper connection with, that may not be able to meet us at the depths that we want, to recognize that everybody is doing the best they can.
Yes.
And I really had a hard time with that one, actually, because, and I imagine people listening have a hard time. Like there's this part of us that says, well, that's BS. What do you mean you're doing the best you can? You can do better. I can do better. We can all do better. What about that belief? What about potential in us? And then I had a mentor help me understand this, that it's not that we can't do better in the future. It's that in this moment, everybody is doing the best they can at the level of their awareness that they're operating from in this moment. And so it's like going to the gym. If you're going to do exercises and lift weights, there's a maximum amount you can lift today. You can get stronger and you can begin to lift more later. as you exercise and grow. But today there is and so whatever, there's a max and whatever, and so what is the max for each of us today? It's however we're showing up today. Because if we had more capacity, if we had more developed capacity, we would be operating different. And that just, that really hit me hard to recognize two things. Everyone's doing the best they can with their level of awareness in the given moment. And number two is that this comes from A Course in Miracles, is to put the frame on every interaction. So someone insults you, someone's critical of you, someone that you love gets defensive or you felt disrespected in some way. What if, this is going to be a wild idea for many people listening, but we'll throw it out there. Like we're here to change and grow, right? We're here to,
Yes, we are.
Share some change and growth mentalities? Some of you already know this and have heard this, and it'll be a reminder and a great reminder to practice this. Others of you, this is going to really stretch your thinking. And there are those of you who really need to hear this right now. And that is that A Course in Miracles writes this, that every act, no matter how skilled or unskilled, is a call for love or an act of love. That what if, so just put that on for a moment. What if every act, no matter how skilled or unskilled, was either an act of love or a call for love? And it goes so far as to say, we're talking about every act. So murders, rapes, people who, thieves stealing from other people, like every act is either a call for love or an act of love. So if it's unskilled, it's a call for love in a mutated, destructive, painful way. But if you actually knew their story and how they grew up and what patterns they were operating with, we would move into understanding and compassion.
Compassion for sure. Yeah.
And
I'm tracking with you because I've been a student of A Course in Miracles for quite some time. But yeah, I think that a lot of people would think that that's a really radical idea. But if you think about how it would benefit, like we're already going through a paradigm shift, I feel. And this idea, I think, would quicken that paradigm shift, as far as how we see other people and how it affects our relationships.
yes.
And I want to go back to something you said, because one of my mentors says something very similar. You had said, if we understood that we're not here to actually get anything, or that we're actually here to give and to give our gifts, whatever those are, and that includes coming to this place of understanding our own gifts and our own authenticity and sharing that with the world. That is again another piece that would quicken this shift in paradigm from one of, I'm here to get from the world, like whatever that is, material things or success, whatever, the sort of more materialistic view of success. So let's talk about what people can do, because we do want the audience to be able to have like some practical tools here. So in your own beautiful, beautiful story about what it meant to be vulnerable, and in John DeMartini's story of what it meant to be vulnerable with his dad, what are some of the things that you do? How do you coach people as far as making an internal shift to get to that place of, I guess, creating an internal sense of safety? Because to me, that's kind of what would be necessary, I think, for people to express their vulnerability and their authenticity.
Yes. So the first step in this is to begin to cultivate a level of self-love that is sourced in spirit, not sourced in the outside world, that is a foundation that we can stand upon. And so that is actually done it's the simplicity of this is also the obstacle to it. And what that means is, in some ways, it feels like it should be harder than this. And so we don't do the thing because it needs to be harder. We tend to overcomplicate this. But the irony is it actually is beautifully simple in that on a daily basis, you can place both hands on your heart, take a deep breath in, and ask yourself, what in me needs my love and acceptance today? What in me needs my love and acceptance today? And just notice what you're noticing. Notice what bubbles up. Notice where you might be feeling insecure. Notice where you might be feeling unworthy. Notice where you might be feeling judgmental or critical of yourself. And imagine that that's energy in your body. And then you use your imagination, faculty of imagination, to imagine that there's a beam of love and light coming out of your heart center, enveloping that place in your body and just surrounding it in love. And then you imagine your whole body wrapped up in this beautiful blanket of love. And then you take a deep breath and you say to yourself, I fully and completely love and accept this place in me now. And what will end up happening is sometimes we'll feel resistance to loving that part of ourselves. Well, I'm feeling critical because I put on 15 pounds, or I'm feeling critical because I flopped in that presentation, or I'm feeling critical because, I'm not, my business isn't where I want it to be. And it's like, we don't want to love the places that we feel inadequate. And the irony is those are what need love the most. By actually loving those, that creates a field of transformation that like attracts like. So you're never going to criticize the failing enough to turn it into success, because the feeling of success is love and joy and happiness. The feeling of criticalness is disdain. Those two vibrations are completely separate. Right. So actually moving into loving the thing that we're in resistance about is transformational. And again, it can feel oversimplified where you say, okay, I'm just going to send a beam of love to that part. I'm just going to circle it up. And, but practicing that is super important. So that's number one. The second piece here is to recognize that it's okay to create healthy boundaries. That actually, Brene Brown actually did a great interview in September of 2020. I was just watching this video where she described that having empathy for somebody and understanding their story and really helping them feel that they're not alone, that really isn't true empathy unless it's combined with healthy boundaries. And so I think what's important in this moment is for us to identify the difference between boundaries and an ultimatum, because there is a very fine line here between boundaries and an ultimatum. And so there's a very simple way to think about it. Boundaries are agreements that you make that honor your needs and values while maintaining the autonomy of somebody else. Ultimatums are about control. They try to control an outcome of a behavior of somebody else. So the boundary goes like this. The boundary says, hey, at this particular gathering, I would love to spend time with you, and I would love to go deep with you and connect with you. And I'm creating a boundary for myself because I want to keep my vibration high, and I don't want to debate political issues at this particular gathering, for example. Mm-hmm. One of your boundaries might be you want to remove politics from this particular gathering. And so you can say, you are more than welcome to talk politics, and you're more than welcome to do anything that you want to do. And if politics gets in discussion at this, I just want you to know that I'm going to remove myself because that's one of my boundaries. And so I would love to know if you'd be willing to enter into that agreement. That real love is about the agreements we make and keep with other people. So having the courage to set healthy boundaries for yourself, recognizing that they have full autonomy to be, do, and have whatever they want in their life, just not around you. That you've got your boundaries and they can have their boundaries. So we're not trying to control them, but we are creating a safe space for ourselves. So, name calling, criticism, blame, defensiveness, all of these things, you can set up ways in which you engage with people. Let's say, specifically, we're talking about relationships more intimate relationships, like with your partner or with family members, where you can say, hey, look, I would love to have an agreement on the way that we communicate with one another, where we eliminate name calling and we eliminate labels. two very toxic forms of communication, where
Yes.
someone's saying you're such an or you're so lazy, or you're this and that, and just the name calling doesn't produce anything fruitful. And so
Right.
you can say, hey, that's a boundary for me. That if that you have full permission to use all the name calling you want on your own time, but in interacting with me, that's an agreement that I want to make with myself, that I'm not allowing that into my world. Are you willing to agree to that? And then you set up that agreement ahead of time. So having healthy boundaries is super important as far as a practical sense of creating a relationship that feels safe enough to share.
I know that you've got a great YouTube video that talks about criticism as
Yeah.
one of the habits that sabotages relationships. And
Yeah.
so can you share with the audience like how inside of an intimate relationship then how somebody can communicate feedback with their partner
Yes.
that is not coming across as critical, because as you said, the disdain is the basis of criticism, and so obviously that's going to erode the relationship. So what's your advice for people? How do I communicate what my needs are or give my partner feedback in a way that is going to strengthen the relationship as opposed to erode it?
That is I'll share with you a couple of personal examples. And then I don't know if you have an example of a moment that's come up and we can unpack it together. But that's a great question because and it's also a very clear distinction. Criticism is about right and wrong. Feedback is making an agreement. Both ways of being are right. So it's important to understand that there is no right and wrong in relationships. There's no right way to do the laundry and the wrong way to do the laundry. There's just your way and my way. There's no right way to load the dishwasher and the wrong way to load the dishwasher. There's no right political affiliation and wrong political affiliation, right? It's just your way and my way. And so honoring people's autonomy is super empowering. And where we get into trouble is where we say, no, like I can imagine some people listening to this are like, no, Matt, there is a wrong way to do the laundry. Like you've never met my significant other and they've discolored half the clothes because they did the wrong way to do the laundry. And I get that. But all we're talking about here is preferred results, right? Some of us prefer that our clothes stay the same color when they get out of the washer. Others of us don't care whether they stay the same color. So here's the difference. When you're going to approach your partner, you say, hey, I would love to have a conversation with you about an agreement that I would love to explore. Making is now a good time. And most people miss this step. And it's just such an essential step because we have to help. It's very empowering to help our partner prepare for a conversation like this, because if you can anticipate that every partner wants to meet the mark, think about it. When you criticize your partner, our partner feels that they're not hitting the mark with us. And therefore it is very likely, unless they've done a ton of work, very likely to trigger a fight or flight mechanism. Because if they're not meeting the mark, they're at risk for getting left, that the relationship ends. If they don't meet the mark for enough times, the relationship is over. That's what the paradigm says. And so when we say in any way, shape, or form, you're not meeting the mark, the natural reflex and reaction for most people is defensiveness. And think about, for everyone listening and watching, if you have the last time you came to your partner and said, you're doing this wrong, what did they do? Most partners will say, no, I'm not. And here's why, right? I'm not doing it wrong.
Right.
And what are they doing in that moment? And I love this idea because it gives us literally X-ray vision. Remember where we said every act is a call for love? So
Yeah.
defensiveness is actually a misdirected call for love. Defensiveness is the core of defensiveness is I'm enough for you. Don't reject me. I'm proving to you I'm enough for you, even though you're saying you're not doing it right. And they're like, but I am doing it right. If we translated that for you're not doing it right, and they're saying, I am enough for you, like we wouldn't have the same conversation. So
Right.
And so the idea here is to start off by saying and reminding them that they're enough. And so you say, hey, I would love to have a conversation. Some I call these sweaty 5 minute conversations, depending on the topic, right? So I'd love to have a sweaty 5 minute conversation with you if you're up for it. Is now a good time? And they'll say, yeah. And then start with the intention. You can say, the intention of this conversation is to create an even better relationship, an even closer relationship with one another. And so that's my intention of what I'm bringing. And then you say, here's what I see, here's how I feel, here's what I would love. Can we make a new agreement? And this stems from there's a great book that teaches this called Nonviolent Communication,
Mhm.
which is a great framework for anyone looking for beautiful communication tools. But it's, hey, so for example, a simple one for my wife was like, I was leaving the cans, like a soda can, Zevia. I like this drink called Zevia, leaving it out on the counters. And she had asked me to put it in the recycling bin. And like, there's every part of me that wants to do that. And I'm fully into that. And because I'm working and I'll be like on a call and I'll go downstairs and make lunch and kind of leave a can and I'll get literally blind to the fact that I left a can out until I come down at the end of the night. And my wife was just getting beyond her wits, like, honey, will you please put the can in the freaking recycling bin, And and so this idea of her saying, look, um, no right or wrong. Cans can be left out. Can be put away. Let's create an agreement. Do we want the cans left out or do we want them put away? I see that they're left out. I feel frustrated because I feel way better when I have a clean environment. And so what I would love, step number 3, is that we have an agreement where you put your cans away. Are you willing to join me in that agreement? And when presented that way, that it's not right or wrong, but it's just a preference and can we create an agreement, it's night and day the results that we get with our partner.
Yeah, I'm kind of honing in on the piece of is now a good time, because I think that is like a tremendous amount of resistance can come up when somebody just starts talking, and
Oh, yeah.
you don't give them that opportunity, to say, oh, and a lot of times personally it's like, okay, I'm in the middle of something else right now. Like, it is not a good time. So I really love adding that piece into it. And as far as looking at defensiveness inside our intimate relationship as a call for love, is there something that you suggest that we can do, like right in that moment, to keep from going into resistance or reaction or defensiveness? Like a simple in the moment tool to shift our perception or our perspective of what's happening.
100%. And this is like literally a magic wand in arguments. And so I encourage everyone to try this out. The next time you're with somebody who's getting defensive, notice first, it takes a bit of inner strength to do this, because when somebody else gets defensive, it's very, very tempting to react, to get sucked into that energy, and both of us get critical and defensive and kind of do this downward dance. But if you can pause yourself in the moment, and I'll come up with an example of this, or if you've got an example from your life, but if you can, so for example, it comes up in work. In work, I work with my family. So my brothers, my sister are all co-founders. My mom founded this company years ago, and so we're all leading this company. So working with family can always have its adventures, So my brother and I were working on a project together. He's our chief sales officer. And there was this project where we were going to review all of these enrollment calls and then give a mastermind on how we can serve clients even better. And so the mastermind was on Monday, and he had promised a month prior to send us 10 enrollment calls. So on Thursday, I call him up and I'm like, hey, or I sent him a message saying, I don't see any I don't see any of these calls. I want to be ready to really serve on Monday. Tomorrow's Friday is my last chance to do it. Each call is 2 hours. So you're supposed to give us enough time to really listen to these. And so I don't even hear back from him. And then he calls like early in the morning on like Friday. And so we get on the phone and he is making excuses and getting defensive about why he didn't send over these calls. And my first reaction wanted to be, there's always the part of us that's ego, right? And my ego wanted to be, you made an agreement, you broke the agreement, live up to your end of the bargain, dude, get your acting, like this kind of a thing. And but that doesn't take us anywhere. So he was sharing his stuff. And so I paused and I said, hey, ultimately he blew it and he forgot. I mean, that's the end of the day. And he was apologizing and being a little bit defensive around it. And I was saying to him, and so I paused myself, and here's the magic wand. If you can repeat what the other person is saying to the degree where they fully get that you understand them, you don't have to agree with them. We're not saying that you agree with the outcome, but that just you understand them. So he said, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, and this happened, and blah, 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 blah. And then I said, well, let me just hear that I'm hearing you correctly. This happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. I repeated what he said back, and I could feel in that moment that he felt heard and he felt understood. Whether or not I agreed that those are valid reasons or not isn't the point. It's just that he felt fully understood. And he goes, yeah. And before I even said the next thing, he goes, and it's 100% on me, man. I should have got those over to you, and I apologize. And here's the system I'm putting in place to make sure it never happens again. And I was like, dude, I really appreciate that. And I know this stuff happens, and I appreciate the new system, and we'll make Monday a great day. And so that is a magic wand. If we can pause and repeat what the other person is saying, their position, their point, you'll watch their defensive shield melt right before your eyes. In most cases, it's amazing.
That is amazing. That is great advice. I find also something that works, or at least it works for me a lot of the time, is if somebody is already spiraling about something,
mm-hmm.
simply not reacting also seems to bring them into that place, of, they start to have a recognition of, oh, okay, I'm spiraling. This person is, because if you're not actually adding your reaction, then it doesn't keep going. That person often recognizes, like, oh, okay, this isn't going anywhere. And like you said in that example, like, yep. Well, and I take 100% responsibility.
Lori, that's a beautiful call out, because that's got to be part of this formula. For you to repeat what they're saying, it requires not being reactive, being neutral, and just holding that neutral state of, okay, let me repeat what I hear you saying. And then so I love that insight. That's great.
Yeah. And then there's an element of presence there, and deep listening, and I think when somebody recognizes that you're actually being supportive in that way, you're supporting them by not reacting, because you're just there with your presence and you're listening. Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And oh gosh, I wish we had more time. But as we finish up our time together, what else would you like to share with the audience to help people have the best year of their life?
In regards to the relationships quadrant, if we just focus in on there, I love putting the best year of our life into really 4 main quadrants. One being relationships, one being health, one being our vocation, the contribution that we're making to the world, and the other one, the fourth one, being our time and money, freedom, and then all wrapped, of course, in our connection to higher power. So let's refocus it on relationships. The number one idea is and some people dabble in this, but it's a rare thing when people actually really go deep in this, is to craft a really crystal clear vision. And I think there's a perfect place to wrap up, because it's where we started, is in the realm of infinite possibilities. If one of those possibilities is that this really is the best year of your life, what does it look like? What do your relationships look like? What are you doing with together? Specifically, what does it feel like when you're in those relationships? What kind of conversations are you having? What adventures are you taking? I wanted to improve my relationship with my son, who's 6 years old, and he's the third child. And I have all these. I've got two daughters and a son, and he's got an amazing personality. And sometimes we butt heads, like just the way our personalities work. And so I signed us up for this thing. I said, my vision is that we are super close and we're friends and we love playing together. And there's a ton of that happens, and these moments when we butt heads. And so I created a vision of what that looks like. And so because I created the vision, I recognized an opportunity that came my way for something called adventure guides. And it's once a month, a daddy son camp out with like
Aw.
100 dads and 100 sons. And so literally this last weekend, 100 dads and 100 sons, we all got to spend the night on a aircraft carrier in San Diego, California, called the USS Midway, and
Wow.
sit in the cockpit of fighter jets and go and explore the boiler room and the navigation room and sleep in the same racks that the Navy, the sailors slept in. And he loved it. Bryson loved it. I loved it. We had such a bond in those moments. And that's what happens when you create a vision of what it is that you would love. You attract to you opportunities to fulfill that vision. And if we're awake and aware enough to see them when they come, then you seize them, you create them, and it leads you to literally living the best year of your life.
Oh, that's beautiful. I caught that you said, these four quadrants are wrapped in this connection to a higher power. So, do you want to say a little more about that before we sign off?
Well, yes, I think that I grew up, my mom was a minister for many, many years and deeply spiritual, and really infused that in myself and my siblings. And we had the privilege of meeting with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and having beautiful discussions. And there was a statement that he says, where he says, there is no such thing as a money issue or a relationship issue or a health issue, because everything is a spiritual issue. In other words, that spirit is at the center of every result that we create. And spirit is ever seeking a freer, fuller expression of itself by means of itself, which means that because you and I are full spirit, that as we are experiencing freer, fuller versions of ourself, we're fulfilling the very purpose that spirit has for us. That's my belief. And so when I say it's wrapped up in spirit, in other words, that means that nothing is separate from spirit, and that
Beautiful.
everything has that as its essence.
Beautiful, beautiful. 100% agreed. And so how can people find out more about you and your work, Matt?
I think the easiest thing to do is to go to bravethinkinginstitute.com. And we have amazing free resources, amazing retreats, and amazing coaching programs that can support people in creating a life they love. That's our mission, actually, empowering people to create and live a life they love. So I'm so aligned with this whole summit and everything that we're doing. So the bravethinkinginstitute.com, or you can go bti.com and it'll take you right there.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. This has been like just a wonderful connection and conversation, and we really appreciate your being here.
My pleasure, Lori. Thank you.